What's up, guys? This is going to be the series for yellow spoilers. So I looked over the mechanics. The first thing I always look for is the keywords. So I looked at the keywords, and the first thing I noticed was it's called swap. So swap. Let's talk about swap for a second. So swap means that if you have the Goku's lineage onto the board, I think later on in the series it might change to other characteristics. So this one, I think it's Goku's lineage as a swap mechanic. I saw this post that says that swap is better than evolve, and I took on that perspective a little bit as well, and I adopted it. So the swap mechanic, what it does is that you pay. So assuming that it says swap, let's say four, swap four. That means an energy cost of 4 in your hand gets swapped out with something that has the word swap 4 onto its text. So the characteristic or the trend that I see is that the lower cost card will swap for a higher cost card. So it's gonna it seems like it's an evolutionary kind of thing where a lower cost energy cost card will go into a higher energy cost card. Keeping that in mind, most evolve cards. So if you think about it, you play the card on top of the lower energy. Oh, it's not typically lower. Evolving just means that you replace a character on top of another character, basically. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a stronger character in terms of base power. It just means that that card will turn into another card. So the weakness of that, the evolving strategy, is that you're required to have a certain character onto the board prior to you evolving for a lower cost. And on top of that, you lose the card permanently. So the card underneath the evolve is kind of off the field already. So you're negging 1 so that you can pay less mana to play the evolve cost. Same thing with X evolve and Xeno evolve. So Xeno evolve is the same thing where you take the card into the warp area and you play the card as the replacement for less than its cost. And the X evolve is a cheaper in terms of paying the less mana to play for it. So swap is a little bit better than all of them in a sense that you pay less. You pay less, and you don't have to have a specified character. So when you look at swap 4, there are about I believe 4 different swap 4 cards. Or 4 energy cost Goku lineage cards that you can go into, and so in that regard, it's better because you pay what? Let's say you have a swap 4 guy. Usually that's a 3 cost energy card. Swap 4 typically costs 2, and so you're paying 2 less to evolve your card onto a different one, and it triggers the ability. So the card that you swap with goes back to your hand, so you don't lose the card as you would in an evolve sense. You would still gain the card still. You'll still have the card, and then you still trigger the auto ability. So let's say you play the 3 cost. Let's use. Is there a 3 cost card that's a Goku's lineage that triggers on summon? I believe there's one. No, there is not. Most of the 3 cost cards don't have an auto ability. But say they did have an auto ability that triggers when they come into play. When you swap it, or let's say you play it on turn 3, and on turn 4, when you swap it, it goes back to your hand so that the next time you do play that 3 cost swap card, or the 3 energy cost card, the autos will trigger again. So it's much better than Evolve in the sense that you can reuse the underlying card underneath it. Again, well, it's not really underneath, it's back to your hand. So that's kind of better in a sense that than Evolve. So great card. Great mechanic. I'm definitely liking the direction where Bandai is taking, where it introduces new keywords, and then we're forced to learn its interaction with the game. I'm sure there's going to be complications later on, but if in the future the game designers would like to introduce new game design or new keywords, I'm all for it. Especially since it updates ruling, it allows for future designs later on in the game, where you could, where they can implement swap, or in this case, we have a new one called Deflect for the black cards. So definitely in the future, when the game starts to design new cards, it can use old mechanics or old keywords and place it into the new text, and we might actually enjoy it as the history of Dragon Ball Super card game goes on. We can start to adopt its strategies in tournament play because we had previous experiences with it. So look out for that one. So let's talk about the. Oh yeah, so another thing I look out for in the set spoilers, especially in yellow, is character cards. So the first thing I look for is Goku, right? So Goku is a card where when there's so much synergy with Goku in the metagame, even in older sets, there's synergy. So the first thing I look for is Goku's, right? Uh, is it viable to be played in the old set 2 Vegeta leader? Or a Vegito leader. I keep saying Vegeta. Vegito leader. Because now you have more Son Gokus, which can turn into any color when it's on the board. So I believe in this set there was like 4 or 5 new Gokus, Son Goku, and it can't be the one from GT or Childhood or anything else besides the differences in Saga. So I look for that, and I look for synergy, right? So this means that Kind Saiyan Son Goku in a Vegito deck can look for these Gokus off the top 7 because they're treated as different colors with the Vegito leader. Other things I look for is like Adolescent Gohans. So there's like about maybe 3 different engines that use Adolescent Gohan. One being my favorite, Vegito Here Stays a Day. You could use Son Gohan Adolescence in a Vegito Here Stays a Day because you're allowed to have more options in terms, because Vegito Here Stays a Day requires you to have Son Gokus in the drop area so that you could play Vegito quicker. That's another reason another thing I look for was Son Gohans. Another Son Gohan engine would be the Majin Buu engine. So a lot of the Grand Evil Absorption Majin Buu checks for the card underneath that card for Son Gohan, and then it would copy its ability its new ability. So every Son Gohan that gets released, I always look for things where I can synergize with the Majin Buu engine as well. The other thing is probably the results of training Gohan. So the results of training Gohan requires me to have a Universe 7 Son Gohan. So I believe result of training, when it can evolve on top of a Gohan, you can bring out Universe 7. So that's another characteristic. So is the new sets now releasing Universe 7 cards to where I could play them from results of training Gohan and then play them onto the board, especially if they're 3 or lower, because result of training looks for 3 or lower Universe 7 cards. So that's another thing I look for. Another thing I look for is things that would synergize with the new TOP Frieza and the Gohan leader itself. So those cards actually have a lot of and the Goku Tournament of Power green card. So those 3 leaders, and including Vegeta, the Saiyan Vegeta, all synergize with upcoming Universe 7 cards. So I believe in this set spoilers so far, the green had about 2 Universe 7 cards that were lower than 3. And that I can play with the Universe 7 leaders out of Tournament of Power. And including in yellow, there's some Universe 7 as well. I can't remember the top of my head, but I'll have it here of the Universe 7 list for the cards that synergize with the Universe 7 leaders. They also introduced Goten. I believe there's 2 Gotens. One was the BCC Budokai Card Club promo that are given out at shop tournaments. That Goten and another Goten out of the swap is able to be used in Mighty Mass engines. So if you look in the Mighty Mass engine, you look at anything that has a youth Trunks and a Son Goten. Basically, by the looks of it, Son Goten doesn't have like a childhood or future version of him. But looking from the red spoilers and including the blue spoilers, we can see that in the red spoilers we see that there's a Goten in there who is a red card, but he's an adult or a teenager, I can't tell. So we can start to see a variance in Son Goten. So the Mighty Mass engine might be able to be viable in terms that it can search them out of the deck in Toolbox and give you a +1 while at it. The blue spoilers, You can see that there's a new Trunks, little Trunks, so we can definitely see that in the More Money Mass engine as well. Swap mechanic, I can see it being very good in a sense that if it is turn 5 where there's 5 energy and there's a 2 cost card, you can attack, right? Swap it out for a stronger one, attack with that one, swap it out for another one. I'm not sure how many energy it would require for me to attack that many times, but I can see that happening where it becomes sort of like a dual attacker or triple attacker. And in that sense, I believe Mafuba is starting to look good. In the sense that you can stop the swapping from happening, since a lot of the swapping cards have barrier. It's in the card text. So cards like cards that would target it and remove it off the board wouldn't be so good if because it targets. So Mafuba, since it doesn't target, will be able to stop the swapping chaoticness of it all. So yeah, that's all I want to talk about with the keyword swap and the things I look for when the card gets spoiled like that. The second thing I look for is the leaders. So the first leader, I believe, was the Bardock leader. So this is going to be the first leader ever where you take a life and then you basically snipe a card that's in rest mode. First leader to ever do this. And I noticed that any leader that self-inflicts damage to itself, when it does awaken, it draws 2. Other leaders that when it attacks a leader or it gains advantage from being unawakened, when it does try to awaken, it untaps energy as opposed to drawing 2. So that's a way to balance out leaders from future card design, which I definitely agree with. Maybe there's a more creative approach to it, but so far, what they've done so far, I definitely agree with in terms of card design. So that the first leader was Bardock leader. So the Bardock leader, you can play cards that help you snipe cards that are in rest position. So cards like Crusher Ball, when they play a card that's a 3 or less, you Crusher Ball it and it goes into rest mode, and then on your next turn you take a life and you kill it. It definitely has some sort of like a control element where you're controlling the board a little bit by taking off meager battle cards like that. And then on the Awaken side, you could use the same thing where you take a life and then you take out a rest mode card, any energy cost card. So as long as it doesn't have barrier, you can kill or you can KO battle cards with 5 or higher on the Awaken side. So it might be a good idea to play Results of Training so that you can abuse the fact that you can kill anything in rest mode regardless of its energy cost. So maybe Result of Training will be seen in that deck. Who knows? Another card you can use in that deck is the Bulma, the TP Bulma, where it comes into play. It rests as a 3 or lower battle card, and then you can use Bardock to kill it as well. And then other cards like Nimbus or Whis, anything that negates an attack from them forcing the attack, but maybe not so great in the long run, because like if you play Whis, right, you negate the attack, it's in rest mode, and the next turn you can kill it. That's basically what you're trying to do with the Bardock leader. Maybe you won't see much play, but this is probably the 4th Bardock already that's yellow and that it can do stuff. It's a leader as well. So there was an announcement about 2 more Bulmas. So the 2 Bulmas here, I see synergy with the Kid Goku leader that was released in Crossworlds. So you can play that with the Kid leader, and then you can search for these new Bulmas. Although I don't find the Bulmas very remarkable in a sense, but it is more targets that you can play to draw more and to toolbox better for that Kid Goku deck. Since I've mentioned in my previous local challenge where Son Goku is a +2, you can allow more access to more Bulmas. Great for that deck. The other thing is let's talk about the other 2 yellow leaders. So the starter coup SSJ4, I'm going to call it SSJ4 starter coup. It has a unique ability where on the Awaken side, of course, on the Unawakened side, it has that generic ability where it attacks the leader, draws a card, and then awakens and untaps 2. But on the Awakened side, if your opponent and if you have lower life or equal to your equal life than your opponent, compared to your opponent, then it has +5 in crit. So what does this mean? So this means that your opponent is forced to have the same amount of life or more or less than you in order to in order to prevent you from critting them and giving him a +5. So that's really this is a really strong leader, in the sense that it has critical inherently, in the sense that you would have to have lower life. But if I was a smart player and I was playing this leader, I would keep my opponent at a higher life. But if I do that, then the double-edged sword is that if they're awakened or unawakened, they're going to keep attacking my leader and then drawing cards as a result. And I want to stop that as much as possible. I want to make sure that my opponent loses resources and the potential to gain resource. So I think the best way here is to rush the new SSJ4 starter leader, starter coup, in terms of playing against that leader. It might be a strong leader. Who knows? We'll find out in the long run. The other leader is called a linear. I'm gonna call it the linear coup, because lineage coup, not linear coup, where if you attack, you discard a Goku's lineage card and draw 2 cards. So it has sort of like a Frieza TOP and a Gohan combined, in the sense that you have to combo, or not combo, but you have to attack with your leader into I think it has to be another leader, and then you discard a Goku's lineage to draw 2. So it's kind of like a combination of the Frieza and the Gohan TOP leader, in that sense. So I'm not sure how it will pan out, but the Awakened side, I will say that it is a plus 10k boost, because when it attacks, it gives both one of your battle cards that is a Goku's lineage and itself +5. So that's plus 10k boost. But it doesn't have double strike. It doesn't have crit. So that's the downside of it. But it does give other battle cards a chance to more attack strength. So yeah. The other thing is I want to talk about was the 3 extra cards. So it looks like from the trend that I'm noticing is that there is about 3 extra cards per color. So in green we had Planet Namek, we had Special Beam Cannon, and we had Sacrifice, right? Where Piccolo's blocking attack. And it seems to be there are negates where you negate an attack and then you take a life. So it allows you to, it's like a self-awakening negate card. And then there's a card, the trend here, it seems there to be a card that gives a boost to your specific leader by, I think it's 15k. And then it gives them either double strike or critical. So Special Beam Cannon, I believe, gives them double strike. And I think the same thing for 10 times 10 Kamehameha gives them a plus 10 or plus 15 and double strike as well. And then the other one is always a variant. So I believe in the green we had Planet Namek, which is a field spell. In yellow, there is no such thing as a yellow field spell. That was spoiled. We had instead Successor of Hope, which is a recruitment card. So it allows you to look through your deck and toolbox for a swap mechanic Goku's lineage card and add it to your hand. So some notes about that card. You could feel your Overrealm card. You can feel your Overrealm because it's a 0 cost card. So if you open up with 4 of them in your opening hand, or 3 or whatever, you can play all of them and then look for the cards that you need to play out your game plan in a deck. And that's a good thing. And it also feels like your Overrealm because you can play it so free. The downside is you can't combo with it. But I would hope that people are mulliganing for all of them, so that you can play your deck strategy fluidly, so that when you don't ever have to draw into them, and then worry about not comboing. But even then, it's a yellow card. So if you're playing yellow cards, you could play Nimbus and just discard it if it becomes a non-combo card, and then you can end your opponent's turn and then play your other extra copies. That's what I was doing with Planet Vegeta. I would have extras in my hand, and I couldn't combo with them, so that's why I play Nimbus to negate my opponent's attack, discard it, or on my next turn play it on my next turn, so that I can take out the bad card or take out the non-usable cards on my opponent's turn. So yeah, I guess that's all I want to talk about with the leaders and the extra card. Let's talk about the BCC promo Goten that was just announced. So that card is a really interesting card because it's searchable by Mighty Mass for the first part. And the second part is when it does attack, it generically looks at the top 3 cards, and then you add 1 to your hand, and then I believe it says put in the bottom in any order the remaining cards. Really good card. Only costs 2. I think it only needs 1 yellow, and it helps you +1 in a very productive manner where you're not getting the cards you don't want, and you're keeping the cards you do want from the top 3 of your deck when it does attack. And you're doing this every time it attacks. So this means that it's a prime target for your opponent's leader to kill. Otherwise, you're fixing your hand over time as Son Goten stays on the board. So it's a really good BCC card, I think. Maybe and it's a Saiyan, and it's 3 or less, so you can Shigeshi it, Planet Vegeta. There's all these 9 cards. Oh, that's the other thing I look for. When I look at a set, I also look for cards that you can Shigesh and you can Planet Vegeta. So very useful in that regard. So another announcement was the giant card. So I think you're gonna need bigger sleeves if you do decide to play the giant card as your leader. But the other thing is that they spoiled one of the red leaders. So it's a red card, which means that from the looks of it, it's a baby card. So baby Vegeta or baby whatever, where it evolves into a golden ape. So the other thing I want to talk about was the other trend that I noticed. So there seems to be a yellow version where you're able to mill 3 when it gets comboed. Same thing with Popo from the green spoilers. It seems to be there's going to be a trend where there's going to be a red version and a blue version and a black version where you're milling 3 when it gets comboed. That's the other trend I wanted to talk about. As for the other announcements, the TPs have been announced. We have Ribrianne, we have a Gohan, a Goku, a Despo, a Supreme Kai of Time, a Tawa, King Piccolo, and a new character, Minato. I've never heard of that before. But with Gohan and Goku, like I said before, it's going to be an adolescent, and it's going to be a Son Goku, which means you can play in like the Vegetos and the Vegeta strategies and the Majin Buu and etc. I don't know if it's going to be a Universe 7, but that's another thing you should look out for with the TPs. And Ribrianne, of course, is another Universe 2 card, so it goes well with the Universe 2 strategies. And then you'll be able to play that as well. And Despo, which is also a Universe 11 card, which you can play with the Universe cards, the Universe 11 cards. So I don't know what their abilities will be, but we'll find out in due time. Dash pack, we have a Kefla. So a lot of people were complaining that we weren't getting a Kefla in the Universe or in the Tournament of Power series. So this means that we now have a Kefla, which is a 4 cost, which means it's searchable by Planet Vegeta. That's always the one thing I always look for. But Kefla is its own thing, so it's not going to be a Caulifla. It is not going to be a Kale, which means it can't be searched by the Veggie package at all. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how Kefla is going to be interacting with the Veggie package that's already pre-existing. We also have a Bardock. That's a new Bardock, which means that you have more of a Xeno Evolve target for the SSJ3 Bardock. And then we have a new Ultra Instant Goku, which is a 5 cost. I'm not sure it's going to have a swap mechanic, but there's already a swap. It has a 27,000 base set. That's another thing that was weird about this, is that there was a weird attack strength of many of the characters. I'm not OCD about it, but it was a very interesting take on it, because with Kaba's Awakening, cards like that would give battle cards +6, which is kind of like a weird, card because it's a 0 cost extra card that you can play on either player's turn, and it allowed you to pump for 6k as opposed to 10k, which almost does the same thing. But I digress. So then we have a new UI Goku out of the Dash pack. Another thing is a Piccolo Jr. I'm not too sure about Piccolo Jr., but we'll see how it plays out. That's all I want to talk about with the announcements that I made. I believe that's all. Yeah, that's it. So yeah. So the other thing I forgot to mention was the Ox King. So the Ox King was announced, and when I read it, it said other yellow battle cards with 3 or less energy cost are able to have barriers. So that means you can play it in apes. That's the first thing I thought about. You can play them the Ox King on turn 1, and on turn 3, you'll be able to play King Vegeta, and then he'll have barriers. So it will make it harder for your opponent to kill both the Ox King and King Vegeta, and then have you inevitably evolve into absolute defense King Vegeta ape version. So that might be a really good strategy to play Ox King, but he's not a ape and he's not searchable by Planet Vegeta, so you'll have to hard draw to him. So may not actually see play, but we'll see. And then the other thing I noticed was Videl. So Videl is a Earthling as well, but you can definitely use Videl in a very old leader called Galactic Emperor Frieza, because Videl says you tap her and then you draw a card and you give another card on a battle area in the battle area +5, and you draw a card, which means you can combo this with Galactic Emperor Frieza, and then restand her at the end of the turn so that she's safe from attacks. So every turn it's like a +1, where it's compatible with the leader. You don't have to attack with your Galactic Emperor, and when he does awaken, you get to draw 2. So I really like strategies where you can use that, where you can use the leader, and then be able to draw every turn. And when it does awaken, you draw 2 more. So it's like a really good leader in that sense. So yeah, that's all I want to talk about. I hope you guys enjoyed the yellow spoilers and the discussion. It was a little bit in depth, but I'm an analyst, and I like to have in-depth discussions about every single card that's ever spoiled. So yeah, hope you enjoy the video. Peace.